Hey everybody, Hooble's Cat. Welcome. Great conversations in the comments on the last video. I really appreciate the time and effort people spent on that. I think it was really valuable for me and hopefully it was for you. So do check that out and I'll link it on this one because it's somewhat related. So history isn't bunk, history can teach us things. So what are you planning to do in your retreat or your home in SHTF? I mean, I heard lots of things. As I've said before, I'm not going to specify what exactly I'm going to do here, and actually, on an interesting note, I might be radically changing my bug out plans, but that depends on a few variables, and more on that as and when. So many preppers online have very thin-walled wooden homes right in forest areas, and in SHTF, if there is a firefight, those homes are likely to be penetrated by bullets. That's not a good thing. From what I've seen in prepper fiction recently and online, people are using things like cars for defense and things like this, and that's also an okay idea. The problem is cars aren't very tall and they have glass windows, and a lot of cars these days, high velocity weaponry will go straight through them. So again, not a great idea. So if the concept is SHTF is national, global, and society's fallen, isn't it a better idea to think about defensive posturing using the 1812 war between Canada and the United States of America? So that's what this video is going to be about. When I was on holiday on the way back from Lunenburg, we went to Gananoque and we looked at the rapids and we looked at the falls, and there's some great ideas there. So what did us Brits do in 1812 to stop the Americans from conquering Canada? How did we do it? Well, simply put, our army was better. Sorry, Americans. No, we basically fortified our own strategic areas. So transport routes by water at the time, we made sure that they couldn't be occupied and controlled, and basically waited it out. There were a few other things like burning Washington DC and stuff like that, but we won't get into that because it upsets people. So that's basically what they'll do. The falls at Gananoque are actually a beautiful place to visit, and their fortification was great, and the dogs enjoyed it. And I'm basically saying, I think if you should be considering using the lessons of 1812 to prepare your prep retreat or your home in the event of SHTF. Hey everybody, Hooble's Cat coming back from my holidays. One of the things we would have to think about in the long term, grid down, would be basic defense, and as ever history teaches us lessons. Strategic overlook, designed as a blockhouse, designed so things shells won't hit it. Lots of ways in, all of them easily defended, and lots of hand-built defences. Useful for a home, useful for a community centre, and fun for dogs, because nobody's shooting at us. Yeah, that's what we all have to think about. Anyway, most likely you don't have cannons to defend your property, and that's fine. But you're likely to have bows, or you're likely to have spears, or you're likely to have guns, and if you're sensible you'll have all three, because it's always nice to have options. I'm sure most people have done this in their prepper retreats, that they've figured out where they would fight from. Have you taken it further? Have you actually created fortified firing positions now in your prepper areas that you could have a large range of motion from, both vertical and sideways, without being overly exposed, so you can actually command the entrances and the surrounding of the property retreat from hopefully a position of height to do that. And that's something that 1812 definitely looked at. So the English fort system was basically a load of rocks, very thick rocks with mortar and concrete, with then thick wood and thinner wood. So the point of this was that you would be on the top and you could literally see America, and you could see anybody trying to do anything behind you as well as from the river, and that's important. Remember, people can get behind you. Famously, the British climbed cliffs in Quebec City to defeat the French. They didn't think it was possible, so haven't prepared that for attack. So expect the unexpected. 360 is where the attack may come from. So the higher you are, the more observation you have. And from the high part, it's not as thick because of weight and construction, but you can fire downwards and get altitude and distance that way. As the attacker comes closer, you drop down to the next level, which is thicker wood, and then you drop down to the final level, which is a solid concrete rock basement. So that's something you should be thinking about, because you really don't want bullets inside your house in SHTF. So this fort was built in 1813 after a raid on Ganakwe by the Americans in 1812, where they took all the supplies and burnt the town down basically, and the British were kind of upset about that. So they built the strategic fort, and it's not huge, but it's really strong, and it's still looking good today, and it's worth a visit if you're ever in the area. It was built also to defend the canal. The canal's rapids out of the St. Lawrence, and at the time in 1812, waterways were the principal source of transport and power. And I think in a global SHTF that may well be the truth again. So again, if you have command of strategic routes, either trails or roads or water, you need to consider reinforcing the control of that by building a blockhouse. Maybe not now, but maybe early on in SHTF, where you can pre-put in concrete bags and mix up stuff and have very thick timbers and rocks ready to rock and roll. And that's something you want to do. And just to note, the canal is the first in North America. Obviously the Mexicans way beat us all, the Europeans, to that by centuries. So yeah, command the trade routes and you will command the area. As you can see, now the canal's controlled by Tourism Canada and wildlife, and it's nice to see wildlife in the wilds. So consider water areas. I know some people are thinking of that for bugging out, and I think that's a good idea. But consider transportation, Ingrid, down, with roads 3 or 4 years down the road in disrepair, and wildlife and trees and bushes everywhere and hostiles. Water routes again will be very important. If you can't canoe, if you can't kayak and you live in a waterborne area, go and get some lessons and practice. You can do fairly cheap canoe trips in Canada for about $110 for a weekend, and they give you all the equipment. It's worth having some basic skills, like knowing how to do a J-stroke and stuff like that. Now for me, the most important lesson for SHTF fortification when I visited the fort at Ganakwe was, yes, get command of the heights, get good visibility. If you notice, it's been maintained by Parks Canada, but vegetation's stripped away. Nobody can crawl in or out. You can really see 360 degrees around that place for quite some distance. What they also did was they raised banks of earth. So those banks of earth that you see in the photographs are actually, that are coming up, are actually 6 foot deep and about 30 to 35 degrees of angle. So anybody trying to move over them literally loses vision, has to reappear the head first and then the body and then the legs and then do the same thing. And in most places they have 2 to 3 of those banks in order. So anybody in that fortification, any sort of ranged weapon, it's going to be very, very hard for any attacker to come in. Now obviously fortifications like that went out of style due to artillery and aircraft. So I wouldn't recommend building a blockhouse to defend against the North Korean army. But don't think that's going to happen. Who knows, right? But I do think it would be a really good idea to have something similar in scope and size and power to defend your local area, or at least have a central redoubt in the middle of an area that you can retreat to and not be touched. Now obviously one of the things you would need to do is have lots of medical, lots of ammunition, obviously. But don't forget, if it ends as a siege, what you really need to do is have lots of fresh water and lots of food. You can wait people out. And that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this and have a great week, and I really have to get some work done. So au revoir, toodaloo.